This episode is brought to you by Trident Coffee, the veteran-owned brand where every sip inspires you to live life full steam ahead. At Trident, they are more than just coffee. They are storytellers. It's crafted by veterans. Their instant cold brew is perfect for those who serve, those who have served, and anyone who values wellness. Featuring natural ingredients like organic mushrooms, adaptogens, and nootropics, it's more than just a morning pick-me-up. It's your new wellness ritual. Enjoy it at home or on the go, wherever your day takes you. Trident Coffee isn't just about great tasting coffee. It's about empowering you to be the healthiest version of yourself, because great veterans make great citizens. Try their instant cold brew coffee today and taste the freedom of wellness. Remember, when you choose Trident, you're not just choosing coffee. You're choosing a path of connection through health and wellness. Use promo code DTD15 for 15% off your order. In 3, 2, 1, and we're live. Hey guys, welcome back to the DTD podcast, Dynamic Tales Delivered. This week in the studio, it's a friend of a friend. A lot of stuff about this guy. 20 years of service, 13 of it in special operations, 8 total deployments. Now here's the amazing part. 50 total months of deployment is a ton of time. It does something to the mind, to the body, physically, mentally. It wears at you. His assignments have included an infantryman, an infantry fire team leader, an infantry squad leader, Special Forces weapons sergeant, Special Forces intelligence sergeant, Special Forces senior leaders course instructor, and on and on and on. So we're going to take a look tonight at my friend, Andrew Impson. What's going on, my friend?
Oh, thanks for having me, DJ.
Yeah, man. Well, I was watching our other one today, and I asked you last time, did I get the name right? And you were like, which one, Andrew? And I'm like, no, I think I can handle that one. I was So we got a lot to talk about tonight. We've talked about it before, so I think it's going to help us out. Let's start back in your youth. You know, you joined pretty early, but you have a history of military in the family. So let's talk about that.
Yep. Small town in Oklahoma is where I grew up. And my dad was in, my uncle, both my grandfathers were both served. And it was just, I don't know, I know we said this before. A lot of guys will say that they kind of grew up wanting to do it or thinking about it all the time. And that's the same for me. You know, just kind of wanted to always be in the Army. And it all started whenever I joined the National Guard when I was 17. And because it was, for me, it was kind of cool that I could be in the Army but still be at home, because I went to basic training when I was in high school. It was like some program. I don't know if it's still there or not, but there was a program the National Guard had. So that's kind of how it all started.
What do you think that made you, because we're going to talk 9/11, everything like that. But before 9/11 and everything, what do you think it was that really put you on this path?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was somewhat of the family history. I could say that, you know, everybody was in, you know, my dad had his old uniforms in the garage still. And so that was that had something to do with it. And I read a lot about the Vietnam War whenever I, was growing up. So I guess really that's it. It was just always something I wanted to do.
Well, what was interesting was that your dad actually knew the recruiter that brought you into the military.
Yeah.
So I think that helped out. Now, probably he knew a lot of people. The town that you're from, not a huge town, has a college in it and everything. But I think that, do you think that helped you at all by him knowing the recruiter, him having that kind of military history and stuff? Or do you think that was maybe not as good for you?
It was probably good, because, you know, if you don't know a recruiter, you might get a whole lot told to you that may not be true.
Right.
But because he was friends with my dad, I mean, I kind of felt like I could trust what he was saying. It wasn't, I mean, it was National Guard. So it wasn't, I wasn't signing up for a bunch of stuff I didn't know. You know, I could go see the guys drilling on the weekends and stuff like that. So, but I think it probably helped out.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I joined about the same time, not the same time in time years, but the same age and everything. Mine was mostly, I got kind of talked into it. I had to do some stuff around the armory in town. They talked me into it. My uncle was working at the armory, and they talked me into it. I say they got me with a cheeseburger and a Coke and kind of talked me into doing it. But there wasn't really, my brother had been in the military, and I had a lot of family members in the military. But as for knowing what I wanted to do, I wasn't really sure about it. Did you feel that way too? I knew that it would be a cool job to do and everything, and it would be fun, and it would, give money towards college and all those other kinds of things. But do you think that, do you think you had any idea of what you wanted to do?
I guess whenever you think of like soldier, this is before I really knew too much about special forces and Green Berets and stuff, or Rangers or whatever. It was just infantry. That was what I thought of as a soldier. So whenever people think of a soldier, really in their mind, I think they think of an infantryman. And
exactly.
And that's what I wanted to do. And so this unit that was in my hometown was an infantry unit. It was an 11 hotel unit. So it was anti-armor infantry. So not light infantry, but that's maybe one of the things that I didn't understand. I didn't really understand the difference between the two at the time, but It didn't matter anyway, because that MOS ended up getting disbanded and everybody was 11 Bravo after that anyway.
11 Hotel, right?
Yeah, it was 11 Hotel. Yep.
Yeah. So was there any disappointment though when you figured out, oh, this wasn't quite exactly what I wanted to do?
No, I don't think so. Not initially. I think once I got into active duty, it wasn't disappointment necessarily, but it was kind of, I saw the other side, the 11 Bravo, the light infantry, and that was kind of pulling me a little bit more, than what I was doing. But I ended up doing that anyway later on.
Well, when you go in, you go to basic, you go to AIT. Were there any thoughts at that time? Because I think we're not to 9/11 yet in your life, but was there any thought of, wow, man, this is maybe what I want to do? I know that you went to college for what, a semester?
Yeah, semester. Yeah, I really used that National Guard paying the bills for a semester.
Hey, you got to use it up, but
yeah,
you figure out there. So do you look at that? Because I think that's where a lot of people in their careers, they think maybe National Guard, but then they go and they really love what they're doing. They love that, as much as they won't admit it. They love that, they're told where to be, they're told when to eat and all that kind of stuff. And that really helps people. I know it helped me grow up a lot. When I was that age, was there ever a time that you looked and you said, yeah, man, I think this full time?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely after 9/11. I don't know if I had thought of it before. I definitely liked it, and I felt really comfortable being in the Army. It just all made sense to me. I don't know if it was the structure of it or whatever. It was just I just kind of fit into it. And I really enjoyed, being good at my job and training hard and all that stuff. And so I'm not sure if I thought about it before, but after 9/11 I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this.
Everybody has kind of a different answer, but what do you think it was about 9/11 that made you want to do it? And people have given all different kinds of reasons why 9/11 kind of, pushed them into the life. What do you think it was about that day that made you change your mind?
Man, that's a good question. I mean, it was an attack, it wasn't a domestic, and I hate domestic terrorism. It's just always like disappointing that we're doing it to ourselves kind of thing. But this was a foreign entity, foreign individuals that had planned this to attack.
Right.
And so that was really it. It was real at that moment. It was like, that was the real thing. And, that then announcements about deployments started coming up and everything. So that was really it. I definitely wanted to go and be a part of that.
Do you think it was, I've had guys tell me that they wanted to exact revenge, that they wanted to do those. Do you think it burned that deep in your head, or was it just more of a patriotism of doing what you needed to do for your country?
Yeah, I don't really think revenge. I just think it was the thing to do. Like, we were attacked. Now we're going to counterattack. We're going to go take care of business. It wasn't necessarily revenge, I don't think. again, and we talked about this before, my view of the world was very kind of narrow at the time. And it wasn't until just probably a few years ago that I really have a full view of everything. So, maybe that's a small town thing. I don't know, but I didn't really see it too deeply like that. This happened. Now we're going to go do this kind of thing.
Yeah. And the whole thing with me, when you look at that and you talk about, you don't know if it was revenge, because I've had guys tell me that is exactly why they joined, was to get revenge, or, to pay back what had been done to us. And what I always find interesting about that is when they go over there and they do it, and they do a whole lifetime of this revenge, and then they look back at on, and their worldview, even though it may be jaded, their worldview opens up, like you said, yours did, and they have a different kind of reverence and respect for war and for combat and for what people put on the line every day. So it's always interesting to see over the course of their career how their worldviews kind of change. And even you saying that it took up until recently when your worldview really opened up, that's always been amazing that when you told me that, because I think, like, man, you saw, 8 deployments, you saw Iraq, Lebanon, Qatar, Turkey, you saw all these different places. Now, granted, it's all for pretty much the same thing, but you're seeing all of these different cultures. And for your worldview not to open up until way later is always amazing to me. What do you think it was that stopped you from opening that worldview up?
I don't know. Maybe just an immaturity in the way I thought. Just being hard on myself here. I think that's maybe what it was. It was, being in the infantry, still kind of, I don't want to say restricted, because I don't want to take away from anybody that's serving. It for me, it was just very cut and dry, and kind of like, you didn't really think too much outside the box, which is an overused term, I think. But, it was just, this is your mission and you're going to go do this. And so you didn't really experience too much of the culture. You kind of did. And it's like, cool, you get to go whatever, get some flatbread in Iraq or whatever. And you talk to people and whatever, drink chai with everybody. But it wasn't really like a deep kind of connection to people, that was my experience. Really, because, the first deployment was kind of the initial OIF one, and then the second one was where I was on the ground more, and I was going into houses, and I was talking to people and doing raids, and I was constantly interacting with people. So that started opening up a little bit. But yeah, I guess I don't know. I haven't really thought about it too much. Why I thought like that.
What you say that you're going to be on the ground though, and you're going in houses, and I'm looking at it from a law enforcement perspective. Okay. That can be a double-edged sword, where you're on the ground more, where you're in it day to day. It's in your face way more than it was on that first deployment. That can make you tend to not like where you're at. That can make you tend to be more jaded. Do you think, even though your worldview didn't open up, do you think you became more jaded having that face-to-face interaction, being on the ground?
I actually liked it, which is this kind of lends itself into becoming a Green Beret later, but I actually really enjoyed it. And I couldn't speak the language, but I liked talking to the people and kind of figuring out what's going on and things like that. So I actually liked it. Even if you're going to do a raid on somebody that, IED manufacturer or something, or somebody that's storing weapons, that just comes apart. That's part of the job, right? But it's not always bad. You might just go into the house to talk to people and, engagement, cultural engagement, and counterinsurgency and all that stuff. So hearts and minds, so I enjoyed that a lot, talking to people and kind of just being out there, interacting with them. I'd rather do that than sit in a vehicle and just see them through a screen, or see them through a weapon sight or something. I'd rather get out there and kind of understand what's actually happening.
When you look at it, your first deployment was with 100, was it 10th Mountain or 101st? I think 101st, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So you go with the 101st, and you would agree because you've seen both in your career. You've seen big Army deployment and you've seen special operations deployment. Two completely different things. Do you think, and think about the question for a second, do you think those big Army people that are deploying, do they get cheated out of a little bit of how special those deployments are with special operations?
As far as understanding what's going on.
I think it's from a couple different perspectives, from from what's going on, from that very, very close brotherhood and team. Because of course you've got friends and stuff in big Army, but this is a very, very close brotherhood. You have more key leader engagements. You have more of the I guess the scope and breadth of what's going on. So do you think that's ever cheated out to the big Army, and that's maybe why people want to leave and go over into special operations?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely held back from the regular military, the regular Army, out of necessity. Honestly, you can't have everybody doing that stuff. That's why there's a selection. And I think that it does. You do miss something out on that. We did a couple missions with SF in that second Iraq deployment, and just watching them, and we were doing all sorts of stuff to like get clear houses, and we couldn't figure out what was going on with this certain area. And they drove up and they walk in, and then they immediately walk right out of the back of the house with a guy in tow, as it were. And he pointed right to where his weapons cache was at. And we're like, what? Like, what is it? How did he just do that? But because we were, even though we were talking to these people all the time and we're interacting, we're still removed a lot of its culture, not understanding the culture, not kind of, we were just, I don't know. There's a barrier there that regular Army really doesn't pass through. You can to an extent, counterinsurgency is a big thing in the regular Army too, but you can't pass through into what special operations, special forces in particular do, if that makes sense.
No, it does. But here's the thing that I would point out from it is I talked a couple weeks ago to Travis Warlock, and I said, is there ever a time when you're meeting with these people, they're giving you information or whatever it is, you're doing village stability or whatever it is. And I said, how do you get to where it's not quote unquote a pissing contest between the two of who's given who the most, and you just realize like, hey, we're helping these guys out? And he said it's very simple, that I can walk out there, point to a building and make a call on a radio, and that building disintegrates. It puts you on a different playing field of being able to talk to someone and maybe gain control of that area that other people can't.
Yeah. There's definitely a advantage we have in a lot of different aspects of warfare. That's one of them for sure. Being able to do our own human and stuff like that also provides, because regular Army can't necessarily, they have those elements, but they're not organic inside of a team. And so it's a huge moving ship that's really slow to turn and hard to, navigate and maneuver. Whereas a team, you can drop an ODA in somewhere and they're going to be able to do all of that within just generally an organic to a team. So yeah, there's a lot that's missed. But again, not everybody can be special forces. That's why it's special. So, you kind of miss, you do kind of miss, the understanding of like, there's always a brotherhood in the Army and the military, especially in combat arms. It grows a little bit, but there's definitely something different about a small ODA, that does all the training we do together and deploys like that in into whatever austere environment, or maybe not even austere, but you're seeing a lot from individuals in a high responsibility, strategic, operational level playing field that most people in the Army won't even understand.
So let me ask you, in saying all the things that we just talked about, when you look back on it, do you think that you were happy being big Army? Do you think that all of it fulfilled you what you wanted out of the Army? Or do you think, because I know later on, and we'll talk about it, you go to certain schools because you wanted more responsibility. So do you think it really scratched that itch that you had?
Um, I don't know why that's a tough question, but it kind of is. I definitely enjoyed it. Um, but there's a lot of frustrating parts about being in the regular Army that it's just frustrating sometimes, and you want to do more and you're kind of held back, not in a negative way or malicious way, but you are held back by the terms of your rank and your position, and you don't have the freedom to go develop a mission and handle it on your own, whereas in special forces you do. And so that's kind of one of the things that I wanted to do. And that's when I talked to a guy in my company that had gone through selection. He went on our deployment, that second Iraq deployment with us. And I talked to him about selection and how it kind of was and how the feeling was. And it was really about responsibility. That's, it wasn't like Ranger School. It was selection. It's a whole different animal. So yeah, there's definitely a responsibility that I guess I was wanting more than I could get as a squad leader or weapon squad leader or whatever.
Here's the most important thing I think that you can look at it from, and if you agree with me, you're treated like an adult. You're not treated like a kid. And I understand when you're talking the first jobs that you have, you kind of have to be treated like a kid because you are a kid. Yes, you have massive responsibilities, but it's not giving you that autonomy, that treating you like an adult that you get later on when people, I guess it would be, trust you to make good decisions.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and that's done by design. I mean, you can't be a 17-year-old Green Beret for a reason, and there's, yeah, you get an autonomy that is, I think, a desired from a lot of guys that are willing to put themselves out there. Because it's not, you don't just say, hey, I want to be a Green Beret, and then you're a Green Beret. There's a lot that goes into that. So, that the willingness to and the want to get that autonomy and that plus the desire to go through the pain that it caused or that comes from selection and the Q course. So I think there's a pairing of guys going through the pain of becoming a Green Beret and then also wanting that autonomy. That's the end product that you kind of get. That's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah, I think that's completely true. Although the only thing I would kind of disagree with you, and you could tell me better, was 18 X-ray program. You're getting pretty young Green Berets to come through. By the time they're done training and everything, they're older, but they're still pretty young and pretty green to the Army.
Yeah, I don't know I can't remember the youngest guy. I mean, it's not like brand new private, but and honestly, a lot of those guys, like, you get good or bad. You get good or bad with the regular Army,
Of course.
But there's a selection process. So there's not hardly any bad is what I'm saying. But the X-rays that make it through, a lot of them have excelled. I had quite a few on my last team, or the Dave's team, and then the next team that we were on. And I mean, amazing collegiate athletes, bachelor's degrees, which they could have been an officer, but they chose to be a Green Beret, and just amazing guys.
Well, we'll get to Dave, and I can't wait to get to Dave because we get to talk about your stories.
Yeah, I figured.
We've talked about it before, but let's talk about it again because I want to see if your answer has changed any since we talked about it. I ask you about your first deployment when you're on the ground, when you go to Iraq, you're there. I think you get there in like February, March timeframe. Yeah. So it's not as hot as normally people would say and things. But when you touch down and you're there, do you remember what's going on inside your head? What you're thinking, how your worldview has even changed a little bit now that you're there, and sights, sounds, smells that you remember from being there?
Yeah, I don't remember the first it's not like the ramp goes down and you're hit with this heat. Because I do know that feeling because I had it many times after that. But we flew on a civilian flight, which is kind of weird for regular Army. I think they were just trying to get as many guys over. It was a company of guys, we had our weapons scattered all over the place. But yeah, it was cold. It was, I think the sandstorms were blowing and it was kind of sticky and sandy and dirty. And we were all in tents in Kuwait.
When you look at it, when you're there, I can once again speak from my career. And the first time I'm in the place that was on my dream list, I wanted to go work there after the academy. And you see it up close and you see it in real life. Like sometimes the only way I can describe it is like, I can't believe this fucking place exists. Like this is a real place. I've heard about it. I've heard stories. I've heard all this, but it's real. Did it live up to the hype when you looked at it?
That deployment, like Iraq?
Yeah, just Iraq in general. Did it live up to the hype?
Yeah, I think so. And really, like I don't remember if it was the initial deployment or it was the initial deployment. We had to offload our trucks off of naval ships that had transported everything. And to me, the weirdest like clashing of what I thought in my mind, there was cities there. Kuwait City was right there and you could see it. And it was these skyscrapers and, the Gulf Arabs always have a lot of flash in their downtown areas and you could see that, but then you're like in the desert and you're getting ready to deploy, which was so odd to me. And that kind of the same way in Iraq too. You're either in the desert or you're in a city and you're seeing stuff that you've never seen before. I definitely think it lived up to what I thought, what it was going to look like.
In Iraq for the first time, when's the first time that you felt like there's a real danger here? Because I know I've talked to so many guys that say there wasn't really anything that happened on this deployment or this deployment, and it really wasn't. I talked to one guy, I think the first time he got in a firefight was like 34 days before he left the country. Like it was ridiculous, a long time waiting. Do you remember the first time that you looked around and you're like, man, this is for real?
I do, but it wasn't actually, I don't think, a danger. Before we left Kuwait to go into Iraq was when all the Scuds were firing off, and it was just it seemed like every half hour, and we would have to get in full Mop 4, gas mask and all that. And I think they sounded the alarm every single time a Scud went up, so it wasn't necessarily directed at us. I think there were a couple that landed close. Another time was sitting in, because the threat of nuclear and NBC, like biological and chemical, was still, we thought that was what we were going to run across a huge facility that produced this stuff. But I was sitting there in a Humvee listening to the radio, and I see a guy on a Gator with his pro mask on, like just flying away from somewhere. And I'm like, what is going on? And then over the radio, they said, gas, gas, gas. And I was like, this is it, great. And so, I get all gas masked up and everything. Well, it was really because they had found a cache of like mortars, and one kid dropped one of the a private dropped one of the mortars on the ground, and they thought that it had gas in it. And so everybody kind of freaked out. But there were a couple other incidences, explosions and some small IEDs that hadn't been developed yet, but not a whole lot, because we were behind third ID on the push up. So, yeah.
When did they tell you that someone had dropped a mortar that they thought there might be gas in? Because I have a feeling the guy flying past you didn't tell you.
Didn't say. No, he didn't. No, he was out. He was, and I'm like, why is he wearing his? And then, so yeah, it was hours afterwards, and my platoon sergeant at the time was the one that had been handling the loading of those mortars, and some kid dropped it. So yeah, I don't know why they thought there was gas in there. They were just somebody just kind of got a little too excited about it, but it was pretty funny.
Do you think
After
do you think that there was, when all of this is happening, because like you said, the nuclear biological chemical was a real worry. They thought that, like you said, there was going to be a major facility and stuff. Did you worry about that more than you think that we probably should have right off the bat, that we should have probably been looking for something else after you're on the ground, after you've done your job for a while? Do you look around and go, wow, there's way more important stuff. Why are we doing this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why we were if it was a political thing or like we actually thought there was nuclear weapons that were being trucked around the desert. I don't know. I was a private at the time. So I have no idea. But yeah, we spent at least a month, maybe more, wearing our mop gear. And that's a hindrance. It slows you down and it's uncomfortable. And, I remember seeing these like museums and like palaces being looted and civilians saying like, do something about this. And we were told not to do anything. So, and these are like thousands of years old artifacts that were just destroyed. And so, yeah, I mean, not that that's like the grand scheme of the war, that's not important, but it is important. I don't know. We were just, they're carrying like golden toilets out of the buildings and we're just like, whatever.
Well, I mean, I guess in their defense, by not having you guys engaged, because you're going to be engaging all the time, because I'm sure that was running rampant over there where people were just doing pretty much whatever they wanted to do. Because I think you get two different schools of thought there. Is you've got a lot of people that are scared, that are staying inside, that aren't going out because this is going on. And then you have people that are looking at as an opportunity of, hey, these guys are here now. The regime's not really going to do anything to us because they're here. Let's fuck this place up.
Yeah, you're right. No, and that's talking about something we should have done, honestly, was understand what was going to happen if the regime, the government collapsed, and I think we talked about that last time, the understanding of the sectarian issue that somebody had to have known. I didn't know because I was a private. Somebody had to have known that this was going to happen. Somebody didn't listen probably, but, that taking that government out, what's going to happen after that is something that we definitely screwed up. We should have seen it coming because there was, months when there was no government and, nobody's getting paid. Like the army, the Iraqi army now they're looking for work and somebody's going to pay them and it's not going to be us until months later. So they're getting recruited by Al Qaeda and, we should have seen that coming a long way, I think.
Well, let's look at that for a second then, because we did talk about that before, where I think the quote that you said was historical context must be understood in a conflict. And when you're talking about things that have been happening for hundreds, even thousands of years, as a Green Beret, you have to learn those things because you're a key leader engaging and all of those. So when you look back on it, how do you teach Big Army to do that? How do you teach the average soldier to take it? Because like you said, I was a private. I didn't know, 17, 18, 19 years old. Do they really even, care at that point? How do we make that a priority? Because I think that you understand everything that's going on around you a lot better when you do.
Yeah, I think the Army has done a better job of that as we've gone on over 20, years of this. I think the Army as a whole is just doing a better job of that. But yeah, you have to know at least big chunks of the history, like Sykes-Picot, the borders being drawn after the fall of the Ottoman Empire. There's clans and tribes that were split because of a border that didn't exist before. And so they don't see that. They don't recognize that. They see their tribe from Iraq into Syria. That's what they see. So things like that, you definitely have to understand. So at least, even a private should understand what is a Sunni and what is a Shia and why do they hate each other? At least that, in a big chunk kind of, understanding of it.
So I understand the why do they hate each other, but when you say they should know the difference in what a Sunni looks like and a Shia looks like, can we talk about what it is that you noticed? Because I think that your lens got opened up way more as your career progressed. What is it that you look at them and you go, okay, I know what's happening right here.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily looks like, but like names and where they live and just kind of like uh, hubs of different area, different neighborhoods and stuff like that. So really, it's just how I look at that stuff and how I kind of understand it is just from studying. It's kind of academic. I mean, even on a team, most guys, you're gonna research your job, and so my job was to know that stuff. So I just kind of had to just dig into it, you know.
As you move through Iraq, because you have 2 deployments, big army, you have 1 deployment SF there, and you've already talked about kind of Syria. You were in Lebanon, you were in Qatar, Turkey. Once again, when you look at that worldview and you come back here and you see everything that's going on here, and you say, this is what we were trying to do over there. We were trying to turn places into democratic republics. And when it's been a warring tribal lifestyle for hundreds or thousands of years, there's never going to truly be a democratic republic. It's just not in the DNA. And then you come back here and you see the riots that are going on in the streets. You see all of the different stuff going on. And do you ever think like, man, what I was over there trying to give our way of life, and then I come back and I see this?
Yeah, I mean that's a tough thing to kind of look at, and most of the people that are rioting, that are causing problems like that, don't understand. I think, I mean, I'm sure there's some that are educated and that have traveled, but they're not understanding what it's like in other places and how to best do things here. Protesting is a right, and that's great. I don't often go to protests. That's not my thing, but sure, whatever, as long as it's peaceful. But I think the understanding of how our government works and just there's kind of a subversive feel to politics today, and that's if you can't win fair, they're gonna try to subvert, and that's kind of what I feel like is going on. So it really, part of what happens overseas has kind of affected us. I think because there's nations that are doing that. My thought that they're putting that into a lot of groups and stuff like that here, that they're being manipulated. The groups here are being manipulated by other nations. I don't think that's a hot take at all, but so it's upsetting that they do that. Yeah.
Well, let's take that microscope and dial it down even more. When you look at it, I think the closer thing that I'm looking at is when you have these people protesting, like you said, that's a right in the United States. That's what you go to, war for. That's why there's police here, to make that stuff peaceful. But I think you get a confused and a very blurred line where people think that they're freedom fighters and that they're doing something when all they're doing is taking a part of something that's destroying an area. Look at how many cities were destroyed in it. And you saw that firsthand in other countries. So to come back here and see it here, it's got to be disappointing to you, or you got to go, what the hell are we doing?
I look at it like, because this was one of the things we taught at SLC, and this is actually pretty interesting. There's actually, antagonists. They're paid antagonists that go into these. They organize protests. They will designate certain people to be arrested. They'll check them off. They're by name. You're going to get arrested now. If you're a teacher, we want you to get arrested. And so it's people pushing behind the scenes that are doing this stuff. So all the people that are just going along with it are the useful idiots. Well, that's a.
I've never heard that term, a useful idiot.
Okay, so a useful idiot. I can't I can't attribute the quote exactly, but it may have been Stalin, or Lenin, somebody. They said the useful idiots. Those are the ones that you're able to get riled up to go start a riot in a downtown and burn their own community to push your agenda. So I don't want to talk about my fellow Americans in a bad way, but that's an actual term that for people that are used to get riled up, and they don't understand why they're doing it. They're just upset about one thing, and then they just get kind of pushed along. So definitely we need to look, all individuals in America need to look a little deeper into why we feel what we feel, and kind of understand that on a deeper level, not just a soundbite or propaganda.
Let's go back to your career for a little bit. Let's talk about you. No, because I want to kind of go back and forth, because I think it's a good point. And the reason I want to kind of go back and forth between the two is because of, once again, I'll go back to your worldview has opened up. And when your worldview opens up, I think that you start to, one, appreciate things a little differently, and you start to notice smaller things a lot more when your worldview opens up. Going back into your career, though, I want to point out just how bad that you wanted to be kind of the tip of the spear. You actually requested to go to Korea because you knew that unit was deploying.
Yeah.
You got to give me the thought behind it, because there's people that wanted to do it. You were willing to go to Korea to do it.
Yeah. And that kind of, I don't know, whatever you call it, drive has kind of slowed down a little bit. You know, I'm not trying to deploy anymore or whatever. So, but I was offered, my first sergeant wanted me to re-enlist, offered me airborne and to go to the 173rd and all that. And I was like, you know what? I did my 3 years. That's good enough. Because in my mind, the war was slowing down, because when we redeployed, there wasn't anything going on, January of 2004 or whatever. So I didn't want to, I was done. I was like, the war's over, did what I came to do, time to go home. And as it got closer to my ETS date, things started picking up again, IEDs, attacks. And so, yeah, I found this unit in Korea. I think it was, I don't know. I'm not sure what unit it was, but they were deploying like that winter or something. Now this is like 6 months away. They were going to deploy. And I was like, I want to go there, pinpoint orders to Korea to go on that deployment. And I thought it's a 2-year tour. I'll do a year in Iraq, come back, that's nothing. So, but the Army was like, no, you can't do pinpoint orders. You're a E5 at the time. And so I was like, well, I'm just getting out. So.
And that went well when you got out. I don't think, though, that you ever fully integrated back in. I mean, you were doing all the things, you were checking all the blocks that you should have, school for a little while, you got hired on with police for a while, but I don't think you ever really integrated back in and were like, oh yeah, I did my time. And I think you always had that in the back of your mind.
Yeah, I did. And the more I talked to my friends from the unit that I came from, my company, and they were getting ready to deploy again. There was, casualties happening in Iraq. And so it kind of ate at me a little bit. I was like, why did I get out? Because I could still serve just fine. And so they were redeploying. And so then I was out for a year to the month, and I went back in. I'd gotten, I was in the Guard for that year, and then I went back in, and I tried to go back to my old unit, but that didn't work out. So,
well, yeah, didn't you have a lot of trouble with the paperwork coming back in?
Yeah, it was pretty much, it just like zeroed everything out. So, and it still is messed up. It's fine, good enough now. I'm retired, but
that's good enough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just it zeroed everything out. Time and service got all weird because my time and service doesn't line up to the dates that I was in because of this. I don't know. It's Army math. I don't know how that works, but it's still confusing to me. But yeah, I went back in and I was an E5. So they said, I didn't get a bonus. They said, you can come back in with your rank or you can get a bonus and go back in as a E4 or whatever. And I was like, well, I'll just be an E5. No bonus. So
way worth it. Way more worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Fort Lewis was, I mean, that's where I got sent. It needs the Army. So I didn't get a choice in that.
So you want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think I told you about the going back in experience.
Well, let's go back over it because a lot of that stuff that we've talked about before, you know, a lot of people haven't heard. So go ahead and.
Yeah. So we talked about 11 hotels. So I was anti-armor infantry. That's tow missiles, 50 cals, you know, Humvees. You're mounted basically. Well, that went away and it was 11 Bravo. So when I went back up there, when I went to Fort Lewis, I was 11 Bravo. I was a striker unit, but it's basically light infantry with a ride to work kind of thing. And I didn't know any of the tactics. Like I didn't know squad attack or anything like that because I was mounted basically. And I got to the company on a Monday or I got all my equipment issued Monday, went to the company, report in, and then Tuesday through Friday I was in the field and it rained on us and it was, you know, just above freezing the entire time. So that was, I definitely rethought what I'd just done, but I got over it quick enough. So,
well, when you go back in and let's point out something else. When you go in and you're an E5 and you go there and you don't know squad movements and stuff, that tends to not help out with the new people that you're working with when there's an E5 that doesn't know necessarily what they're doing.
Yeah. And it was immediately into the field. So I didn't even know what I was supposed to be doing. Yeah. So it's like, we're doing a squad attack and I'm like, oh man. All right. So I did a lot of, again, studying and training on my own and to get caught up because I don't want to be bad at my job. I want to be, you know, be reliable. And so it took, you know, I spent the next few months before I went to Ranger School, which I still hadn't quite mastered it all, but definitely did as much training on my own as I could to figure out what I was supposed to be doing. And it worked out. But
it did work out, but do you think it hurt you in the beginning? Playing catch up?
Yeah, very briefly, I think it did. Just because, like, the PL's like, what do you mean you don't know what you're doing? I'm like, I can show you how to set up a tow missile, but if you've got questions about a 50 cal, I'm here. But, you know, so it did hurt, I think, initially, but I'm sure, I don't know what their view of me was, but I mean, I think I overcame it pretty quick because I put a lot of effort into knowing what I was supposed to be doing.
Well, and we've talked about it before you went to Ranger School. You actually go to Ranger School because you wanted more responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Do you think that going to Ranger School and getting that responsibility, because it's pretty much a leadership school, when you go there, do you think that was the spark for Special Forces, or was there something else that happened?
I think that was a good kind of eye opener a little bit to other people, and there were SF guys that were there that I talked to, and you know, just like kind of they were like super knowledgeable. They had an understanding of behind the scene kind of thing that I didn't. Like we would get smoked, you know, out at 3 a.m, having to do push-ups and everything, and they're like joking around, and I'm like, why is this funny? But it was because they already they knew the game. They understood what was happening. They were, you know, understanding what the RIs were doing and what their job is. And so that kind of opened up a little bit, I think. Yeah.
Did you ever take that kind of approach once you're through Ranger School, once you go through, you know, selection, the Q course? Do you think you kind of molded into that person, or did you stay the same one that you were? Or do you think that all of these different life lessons or what you did, do you think that molded you into a better Special Forces operator?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the experiences that I had in my career to that point definitely helped. I was able to kind of see through things and, understand what was happening. I definitely didn't become like, the ultimate special forces guy, but I also think I just kind of a combination of between what I was before and then a Green Beret. And I think that's fine. We kind of talked about it before, and I think, once guys go through selection, there's a shared, I guess, a cluster of characteristics that everybody has that really kind of, you can have all different types of personalities. We're all kind of similar, like we all speak pretty much the same language and have a very shared common understanding. But there's a shared characteristics that we have that whatever different personality traits that we have, it just kind of works. There's always friction between everybody. It doesn't matter who it is, but I think it's pretty unique in special forces. It's not just like a physical, are you physically capable of doing this? And if you are and you don't quit, then you're good. It's really, they look at different, leadership traits and teamwork and those types of things. And you kind of get a unique soldier that gets through that filter.
So let me ask you, breaking that down even a little further, all of the jobs that you can do as you become a Green Beret, you know how you said everyone's kind of the same, everyone has kind of the same characteristics, but do you think that those jobs are specially suited for each of those people? Or do you think that someone could slide into each and every one of those jobs? I know of course you're going to cross train and stuff, but do you think that they select those jobs for those people because that's what they were meant to do?
I think we could probably all do the other jobs, but not as good, not as high level as if you're selected for that job. So there's an aptitude, level to, or a component to it. So like the medics are going to be the higher level aptitude, because they have to do all this medical training and become advanced paramedics and stuff like that. And the joke is that the Bravos are at the lower end because, Bravos just want to play with guns and break stuff. So I was a Bravo, so that's just kind of what it is. But
I'm glad that you let everyone know that you weren't making fun of people that, hey, that's me.
No, yeah, there's definitely, there are just like every group has its own characteristic. Every MOS kind of has a stereotype that goes along with it. So yeah, I mean, I think there's people fall into those naturally. You also sometimes get to pick what you want to do, or you can ask for it. But if you have a super high GT score, you're probably going to be a medic, and you might not be able to control that. It's just what it is. So there are different characteristics to each MOS for sure.
You're not saying that you didn't have a high score. Let's point that out.
Well, no, there's definitely, so there's a minimum score to get into SF, period. So
I just want to make sure, because you already told on yourself. So I just want to make sure everyone knew that.
Yeah, nobody has a super low score, because you have to have a high enough score to get in.
100%. Let's talk a little bit about being with the different ODAs, being with the different people. I want to bring up someone in particular that we both know, Dave Lucas. And I want you to kind of tell about working in and around that group. This episode brought to you by Nomadic Research, built for the wild and forged in adversity. Somewhere between the front lines and the firelight, a vision was born. The founders of Nomadic Research spent years in the harshest environments on Earth, where grit and resilience weren't just words, but a way of life. They saw a need for gear that could handle anything, gear that wasn't just built, but built to last. From battlefields to backcountry trails, every piece of Nomadic Research gear is designed with one mission: unyielding performance for those who refuse to quit. The founders believe in patriotism, personal responsibility, and the freedom of the great outdoors, because adventure isn't just a weekend escape, it's a way of life. Born in the heart of Afghanistan, forged in adversity, and built for the wild, Nomadic Research is gear for those who go further. You can start your adventure at nomadicresearch.com.
That team in particular is just extremely impressive. The guys that are from that team that have gone and done things, it's crazy. I mean, it's like everybody. It's wild. But yeah, that's a great team. And I went there initially, and then I was a brand new guy, so I was a Bravo. I went there, and I ended up being the senior Bravo, which is not usually how it works. But the other Bravo on the team was an X-ray, and he didn't have as much experience as me. We were both staff sergeants, but I had been ones longer. So that I never was a junior, which I think I kind of wish I had been at some point. But either way, I ended up going to the B team for that next trip because the other Bravo, who's another amazing guy, he was at a school that they needed. It was just he had been on the team for a long time, so it's kind of confusing. So he ended up going with the team on that deployment, and I went to the B team, and then I went back to the team after the deployment. So, but yeah, it was a great team. I didn't get to be on it too long before everybody kind of disbanded. After that trip, guys kind of started moving around, and the team kind of, guys switched out, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And I'm glad that you said that because who I had on here last week talked about it, and they talked about that the team that was there before it got disbanded, it just gelled. It just felt right. And then people started moving around, and then they get a whole new command staff, and then it all, I won't say immediately goes to shit or anything, but it's definitely, there's growing pains. There's stuff that is hard to figure out. I guess the question would be, if we know that a team is gelling and they see it, they see the reports coming up and everything, why break that team apart?
Oh, that's a tough one. A lot of it is just, I don't want to say, because we actually do a better job than the regular Army for talent management, I think, in Special Forces. You can recognize that this guy is really good at this and he needs to be doing this specific thing or whatever it is. A lot of it's just Army requirements. Guys have to be evaluated. They've got to move to broadening assignments. They have to do B team time. They have to go to be an instructor, and it just kind of happens sometimes. I do wish that guys could remain, because I've seen that exact thing, what you're talking about. An amazing team that everybody gets along to the best of everybody's ability. I mean, amazing chemistry, and just get the mission done. And then guys got to go to the B team or go to be an instructor, got to switch out. And then it just it never is the same. It is the same. It'll just take a little while for it to get back, So I don't know why. It's just a requirement thing. That's a Dave question for sure.
You think he would tell me?
I
don't think he would.
Maybe offline. I don't know.
Yeah. And let me point out to that, because you say that's a Dave question, but that's where I heard that the shift really happens with the team. People going to schools, or people having to go over here, or being an instructor or whatever. But when the command staff changes is where I hear that the stuff really falls apart, because you'll bring in people that don't necessarily, because as we know, every group has quote unquote a different mission, has a different fighting style, has a different, however you want to categorize it. And then you'll bring people in that have never had that style, that are in command positions. And that's where you see it really fall apart.
Yeah. And I don't know if that's just over the interviews that you picked that up, or something, or you had a conversation about that. Cause that's right on that's spot on. Cause you will get, and it's generally the officers, and I don't like this. This is just my opinion. I'm not anymore. I guess I can speak my opinion a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to visit you.
Yeah. So the officers will often do that. You'll get a battalion commander in 5th group that is originally from 10th group or 1st group. And it not necessarily anything against them, but there is a culture difference between the groups. And I would, a 5th group officer going to first group or seventh group or whatever might not go over very well. So yeah, I don't like that. I think a lot of it is just, it's again, broadening, because if you're wanting an officer to promote and to have a lot of experience, you've got to let them see other things besides just their little AO of the world. Not little, but you know, you got to get them to another group to see how other groups, because if they're going to be in charge of, you know, maybe Special Forces Command or something, they need to be able to see other aspects.
When they do that, don't you think that there's a way to do it? Because I've thought about this a little bit, where it's an overview position, or it's someone that's learning the different cultures, but they're working in the command staff, but they're working maybe an administrative, because they're looking to go up higher and higher to be in charge of those groups. Because I think when you mess with the soup of those guys really knowing what they're doing, and you get a different command philosophy, you get a different idea. You see it in law enforcement all the time, where you get a different command philosophy, and it really kind of throws a wrench in what's going on. But I think there's a way around that by having people that are looking to take those bigger positions being kind of a, I don't even know what you would call it, like a shadow, or watching how it's done and learning maybe the command side or the leadership side of it, not necessarily putting it into action.
Yeah, I think that comes down, and this is just what I think, because the officer side, and especially at that level, I had nothing to do with really, but it's just, I think that comes down to key positions for like moving an officer from first group to third group. You might not be able to do that for somebody that's just going to be an XO or whatever. That just takes a lot. So yeah, an XO position would probably be great. Somewhere in the staff would probably be good. But for the Army to move somebody around, I think it's just a billeting thing, honestly. That's my best guess at it. But yeah, I think you're right. I think it can change the culture. Because like, yeah, you said like, yeah, if you came from, well, I don't know about a law enforcement example, but one city in another state to, you know, somewhere in Texas, if you came from California to Texas, that might throw the culture off because the laws are different. The whatever
happens, you know, all the time, the time. When they do for the quote unquote chief, the top cop, it comes from out of state, out of town all the time. It's never, I won't say it's never, but it's very hardly from within.
And I don't necessarily, and I understand why, like if you get promoted from specialist to sergeant, you're going to get moved to a different fire team. That makes sense, because those are the guys you hung out with, and you know,
can be in charge of them.
Right, exactly. You hang out in the barracks all the time with them, and now you're in charge of them. But for officers or chief or whatever, I think at that level, any of those friendships, you know, probably are, I don't know, they're not going to be the same. A group commander isn't going to be buddy with a junior Bravo on a team, you know.
Right. If he even knows him.
Well, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about Dave a little more. Dave told me a story about you, and he wanted me to make sure that I ask you about it. Speaking of law enforcement and stuff, you had a little trouble with the law in another country. Can we talk about your run-in with the law in Iraq?
All right. So I didn't knock the internet out before, but the second interview kind of let me think about this a little bit.
Okay. I can't wait to hear this.
Well, so I wouldn't even say it's law enforcement. And I know you're an MP, and MPs are technically law enforcement, but this wasn't a law enforcement issue because I work with law enforcement. You know, a lot of the stuff I do with active threats in schools, it has to do with law enforcement. So it's not that. And so I understand law enforcement as much as I can, I think, without being a cop myself. But it was an MP, right? So this was 2011. I'll make this a little more concise than I did before. I think I was rambling before.
No. Tell it like you did, because that's better.
So 2011, we were in Iraq, and it was Operation New Dawn. So most everybody was already withdrawing, but everybody around the airport in Baghdad, all those bases that were there were all gone, had been handed over to Iraqis. And we were told, the special forces elements that were there, we were told to prepare to stay, right? So we might have still had a presence. We weren't sure yet. The policy hadn't been decided. And so I was in charge of base defense for where we were at. And so I was getting sandbags on this particular day. And I had three or four, I don't remember, flatbed trailers driven by Iraqis, and I had an interpreter. And so I was leading them to the far-flung edges of the base where there was no more soldiers. It was just, I think there was KBR civilians, and then there was Iraqis all over the place. And so I'm pulling up to the gate, and an MP pulls me over. And for context, because I think I said it last time, they were giving Iraqis tickets for not having insurance. So that's kind of where they were at in their life. I don't understand it, but so he pulls me out. He's a specialist, and this is why I say it's a soldier thing, not a law enforcement thing. He's a specialist. He looked maybe 19, and he's like, explains. I think he told me he was pulled me over because I didn't have a seatbelt on. Again, I'm wearing civilian clothes. I've got a gun on me. I'm escorting Iraqis on basically an Iraqi base at this point. And he pulled me over for seatbelt. I said, hey, I've got to get these trucks out of the way. We're blocking everything. Can I get them situated? And he's like, yeah, go over there. And so I go, and I get out. And again, so this is kind of the lesson learned. I guess I'll tell the story, and then I'll talk about the lesson learned from this. So I get out, and I tell the interpreter, I said, hey, go tell the drivers, go line up over here. And he gets out of his vehicle and starts screaming at me, get back in your vehicle, get back in your vehicle. And I'm like, whoa, man, like, take it easy. I was at E7 at the time. I told him who I was. And I know that doesn't matter to MPs. I know that I think that might have gone to his head a little bit, that he was.
Don't confuse your rank with his authority.
Yeah. Like, you can, if a general tells you to stand at attention, you don't have to, because you're, exercising your authority.
I just want to point out, you keep saying I was an MP. Yes, I was an MP, but I was also a Ford observer. I want to point that out. You keep saying I was an MP, and I want to point those things out.
I just not to insult you is what I mean. So, so he's freaking out at this point, and I'm as calm as I've ever been in any kind of confrontation. And I'm like, hey man, like, take it easy. And he said, I'm calling a supervisor. I said, please do that. You're freaking me out a lot. And he's, his face is super red and his lips quivering. And I'm like, dude, like, really take a second, like, please call it a supervisor. And, he's like, I can't remember exactly what he said. He said, you're making me look like an idiot. You're embarrassing me. So I'm going to arrest you, or something like that. And I was like, wow, this is getting way out of hand. So he pulls his handcuffs out, and I have my hands up, like, I have my hands like this the entire time. And, he tries to throw me. And so I think that my thought process here was that if I let him arrest me, he's going to disarm me. He's going to be the only one that has a gun, and we're the only people around that are soldiers. Like, there's Iraqis, there's nothing but civilians around us. I'm like, this is terrible. Like, this is not what needs to happen. So I threw him, and he went pretty easily. I'm not a judo practitioner, but he went flying through the air. And when we came down, I landed on my elbow, and it dislocated my shoulder. And so he's freaking out. He's grabbing for everything. And this is another lesson learned. I couldn't move my arm, and he grabbed my gun and threw it like he was disarming me, And so at that point, I realized I had to restrain him because I didn't want to get shot. So I popped my shoulder back in. Reducing a dislocation is pretty uncomfortable, but I had to do it to use it. And so I held him down. And I didn't tell you this one before. Another thought that I had was, I thought about handcuffing him. with his own cuffs. And then I was like, that's probably going to make it not better for me. So
Yep.
I,
I mean,
because
solid thinking.
I mean, I was like, I mean, I'm not looking at law enforcement here. I'm looking at a soldier that's freaking out. So anyway, so I show him my ID card. I'm like, dude, I'm a soldier. Like, what are you doing? And all the civilians had come over and they're like, he's special forces. Cause I'd been working with them. Like, he's special forces, he's special forces. So I was like, hey man, I'm going to go holster away, facing away from you. Don't shoot me. I let him up. I go holster, have my hands up. I turn around and he ran to his car and, he had dropped his hat. So I went and picked his hat up and I took it to him. He ran back out of his car, grabbed his hat, ran back into his car, and then like reversed for 100 meters and parked. So, at this point, the Iraqi civilians are bringing me water to wash my hands off with and like wash up and give me drinks of water. Because they were like, what was he doing? Like, they saw the whole thing. Anyway, so they took me down to their station and, they were trying to play games with me. And I also didn't mention this. I think one of the main reasons is because they weren't allowed on our base because it wasn't an American base. It was a Iraqi base, our little compound. They were not allowed on there. We had guards that would stop them. So they would have to call for us to go talk to them if that's what they wanted. So they probably didn't like us anyway. I didn't help that situation for sure, but
what?
Anyways.
Come on. That's brand new information. Okay. Couple things. One, you didn't throw him. You balance displaced him. Okay. Always keep that in mind. You balance displaced him. That would have helped out a lot. Cause that's what you would have told him. Number two, great job that you did not handcuff him with his own handcuffs. Cause I do not think that would have ended well at all.
Probably not.
And then 3, you're an E7 at the time. You've done all this stuff in your career, and an E4 is doing this. Do you feel a couple different things I want to ask you? Do you feel like the Army had changed a little bit since you went through? Because you know how everyone says, oh, it was the hardest one I went through and stuff. But do you think the Army had changed a little bit? And then when, we talked in the beginning where you go, yeah, that's important, but this is kind of more important. And maybe I shouldn't focus on this. What are your thoughts on all this as this is unfolding?
Yeah, I just, I thought that, and this kind of goes into when my commander and team sergeant go down there and they're talking to the other MPs and my team sergeant's talking to him and they're making fun of this kid saying he's a problem. He's always having issues and whatever. So I just think that they should not have let him be driving around base like that, pulling whoever he wanted to over. Because at this point, there were Iraqis that were in control of a lot of these bases or these roadways and stuff. So I think that was a big mistake because he was very unhinged. He just wasn't, I don't know. He just shouldn't have been doing that. And so, yeah, everything got tossed out. Like they were trying to play games with me. I just told him I wasn't talking to him anymore at that point. And then commander goes down there and it all gets tossed out. Like nothing happened. So, what's important, I guess, we were withdrawing from Iraq. They had top 10 terrorists up on their wall, and maybe they were given insurance tickets for looking for terrorists. I don't think so, because I got pulled over for a seatbelt in Iraq in 2011. Like, yeah, not looking at, that's kind of like end of the empire type stuff when we're worried about seatbelts as we're redeploying from a 8-year war. So, but I will like to say the lesson learned for me, and this is important because it takes me several times like this to learn, but not recognizing that he was not going to think like I think or was thinking was my fault, because I was like, wait, man, we're both, soldiers. I'm a Green Beret. Like he should think that's kind of cool. We should talk.
You should lead with that next time.
Well, yeah, but I just thought we would be able to talk as the only soldiers anywhere around. Like you couldn't see another soldier. And so that's what I thought he would think like too. And that was not what he was on, whatever, National Guard state training ground, pulling people over on the weekend. That's what he was doing. And so, yeah, I should have recognized that, especially when he started getting red in the face and lip quivering. Yeah, it was important for me to like manage the Iraqi drivers, but I could have just got back in and got a ticket for a seatbelt. But, I wasn't thinking like that at the time. I thought it was just going to go a way different direction than it did.
When you look back on your career, I want to ask you a couple things of the moments in your career. I want to know if you'll tell me when you felt the most fear.
Honestly, probably a night jump.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think, and I saw a lot more combat in the infantry, just to get that out of the way. A little bit in the special forces, but nothing like some of the guys that you've talked to that, 3-day running gunfights and stuff. I didn't ever get that as much as I would have wanted it at some point. It never happened. So, yeah, I think that's probably one of the most dangerous things that I've ever done. We do night jumps with oxygen, free fall, and that can get kind of sporty.
When do you think that you were the most, I don't know if this is the right word to use, the most brave in your career? And that can be in combat or just doing something that you knew that you needed to do.
I think, I don't know about brave, and I don't want to say reckless, but kind of pushing the limits a little bit. Probably that second Iraq deployment. My squad definitely got the brunt of every mission we had, and going to find IEDs, because we talked about that before. I didn't want to run over an IED. So if we see something on the road, I'm going to have everybody get out and we're going to go find it. So cutting wires and, this was at the time when command wire, they were using it, and guys had wire pulled out of their hand because the guy that was detonating it was 100 meters away behind a tree, and he pulled the wire out of a guy's hands, So, looking for that, trying to find those guys, was probably, just that whole deployment, I think, really. There's a lot of stuff that happened on that one.
Can we talk about that one a little bit? I want to kind of dig in, because I feel like in all of your deployments, all of the stuff that you did, that one was the most significant to you. That deployment was the most significant of your career.
All my time in special forces, I think, trumps all the other stuff that I did to an extent. I hold that a little dear to me, being a Green Beret, but yeah, that one was a pretty rough deployment. 15 months. I was there for 14, I think, because I graduated Ranger School the day they left. But
you had to meet him there, right?
I did, yeah. It was 3 weeks. 3 weeks after they left, so I was 3 weeks late. But yeah, it was almost every day it was some manner of contact, whether it's an IED or RPG or a mortar or small arms fire or something. They were doing quite a bit of stuff. So the unit that was there before, this was in Tarmia, and so the unit that was there before, I think it was a month before we relieved them, had a V-bed driven into their patrol base, and they were like almost overrun, because it was just overwhelmed with fighters. So, yeah, it was just Tarmia was the most time we spent there, about 9 months. And yeah, just something almost every day, clearing houses. Who knows how many houses we cleared. IEDs, a lot of strikers got destroyed. They were like, they had gotten to the point where when we had like a T intersection, or it was kind of an L-shaped intersection, and a striker would be pulling security down so there's a gunner out of the hatch that would pull down one road, and then a striker down one. And so when one striker moved out and then the other one would relieve them, at that time, they were doing stuff like basically low crawling into the serpentine of the HESCO bearers and putting pressure plate IEDs like inside of our perimeter and then running off. And they were throwing stuff over the wall. It was just kind of crazy how active it was.
There's two questions that come from that. One, do you ever start to hate the place that you're in? And what I mean by that, because we've talked about it a little bit, do you hate just the people that are around, not the fellow soldiers, I'm talking about in general, the populace? Do you just start to hate it and think, fuck this place?
I never really felt like that.
Okay.
I felt like the people that were there, it was a majority Sunni town, and Al Qaeda was the ones running it, and Al Qaeda is Sunni. There was some Shia militias that would like try to kill civilians just for propaganda or whatever. But, you know, we initially, when we try to talk to the civilians, they didn't want to talk to us because they would say Al Qaeda is going to kill us. Like, we can't talk to you. And, you know, eventually we got to where we were fighting them off enough to where we could talk to people. So I think that was pretty cool. I didn't really feel like it was them. I felt like it was the pressure that they were getting from AQI that, yeah, they're probably sympathetic to them, to be honest. They probably were, but I think they would have talked to us if we were in charge of the town, but they were just talking to them because they didn't want to get their head cut off.
So do you think that goes back to what we've talked about this whole time, is knowing context?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I knew it was a Sunni town, and Al Qaeda, if I'd understood a little bit better that Al Qaeda is Sunni and that there's probably a sympathy between the people and Al Qaeda, I think it would have probably gone a little bit further in understanding. You know what I mean? Like, I just knew that Al Qaeda would kill these people. What I didn't know that they probably, some of them probably just say that so they don't have to talk to us, because they probably are sympathetic. And yeah, so a lot of the stuff, you know, I think they were paying people to plant IEDs, like, you know, unemployed youth that were running around the streets anyway to plant IEDs. And understanding that, we could have probably affected a lot more change a lot quicker instead of just running over IEDs all the time.
You say infecting change or starting change there.
Yeah.
Do you think anything ever really changed?
I mean, eventually, militarily it did, because we were able to kind of choke off a lot of the routes that they used. As far as ideologically,
that's what I was getting at, because you hear so many times, hearts and minds, hearts and minds. Of course, there's a time for hearts and minds. In every job, there's a time for hearts and minds. But do you think that there's not really winning hearts and minds in a place that has been fighting for, you know, the beginning of time?
There's probably some effect to it. It's more surface level, maybe. Like, if you give a little kid a piece of candy, he's probably going to have thoughtful memories of that when he's an adult. Might not mean that he's not going to be trying to kill you at some point as an adult. But there is, you know, a woman that husband was killed because he's a terrorist, but you're nice to the woman and the children and you take care of them. She may withhold information from Al Qaeda. But, you know, in 10, 20, 100 years, I mean, what we did in Iraq, it's not really going to matter.
So when you look back on your career, of course, everything was worth it. There's no doubt in my mind that you would say that everything is worth it. Is there, excuse me, is there stuff that when you look back on it, though, we've talked about being a little more open in your context and everything, but is there other stuff that you look at that you wish you would have done that you didn't do?
Like militarily, like,
I think just in general, and I think that can fall into a ton of categories. Militarily, just being a better person, a better soldier. I mean, it could fall into a ton of categories.
Yeah, we don't have enough. We're not going to have enough time for me to go over everything I should have done differently. Yeah, I think going back to like learning, and kind of now that I'm retired, I can reflect on things a little bit better. And as a leader, I could have done better. It's really about understanding other people. Whether you're talking about a population of a town in Iraq or Syria, or you're talking about guys on your team, I think understanding who they are, what makes them tick, what is negative for them, what's positive for them. I think that is probably the biggest thing that I would have liked to learn earlier on, just across the board, for us and for whoever we were working with from a different country.
We haven't really talked about your family a lot. Can we talk a little bit about how your career affected them? And I don't even mean just when you were in the military, when you were deploying and stuff like that. Afterwards, how you think it's kind of followed you into this life?
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, the deployments are in TDY and especially in SF, we're gone all the time. So that's tough. Yeah, I think that especially trying to figure out transition and from retirement into civilian life, because I don't, I'm not going to let it go as easily as some guys might. And I tried to, but it's still there, still who I am as a soldier. So just a lot of it is trying to figure out kind of what the Army and the effects of the Army are now. Because once you're running 100 miles an hour, this is kind of how I always explained it. When you're running 100 miles an hour and then you stop, that's when everything starts coming up. Like TBI issues and stuff like that. You might not even, a lot of guys don't even pay attention to it. They're just trying to get the mission done. And it's actually called reverse malingering. I don't know if you've ever heard that.
I have never heard that term, but I understand where it's coming from.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a thing that happens on teams, because you don't want to leave your team. And so guys will put off issues and stuff like that. But once you're out, it all kind of comes up. So you try to figure all that stuff out. And what's kind of next for me is, I've got more time with the family, and it's just still trying to figure out how it all kind of works as a civilian, even a couple years after, still figuring it out.
How many injuries you think you left with?
I mean, there's a lot of joint issues, back issues. I mean, quite a few different, foot, stuff like that.
TBI, concussions, how many do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that one's hard for me to place. I kind of came up with like 4 big events throughout my career. But, you had Dr. Free on, and I watched that one, and that was because the operator syndrome is really big, but so it's a lot of like overpressure stuff. Firing an M4 inside of a room has a lot of overpressure. So you go in with a 4-man clearing team and everybody's shooting. That's got stuff to do with it, breaching charges and all that. Firing 120 millimeter mortars all the time. It's just kind of it's cumulative, I guess. So there's no telling.
How do you think it affected you now?
I look at like operator syndrome and kind of like I could check quite a few of those boxes. So,
but you don't want to say it, do you? I can tell by how you answer that you don't want to say it.
Say what?
Well, it goes back to and I see this a lot. It goes back to the reverse malingering thing. You don't want to be the guy that goes, "Yeah, I got fucked up." you don't want to be that guy.
Well, and because there's guys that have it way worse than I do. I mean, 100%.
Of course.
But and there, just a lot of this stuff is like nagging stuff for me. Like sleep. Sleep's a big issue for me. Whatever I try to do, I've tried to do a lot of different things. Sleep apnea, which is a huge thing in special operations, which is
at a young age.
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense because like the normal population doesn't make sense. But so stuff like that. I think sleep's one of the biggest ones that I have to deal with. Just try to get enough sleep and try to stay asleep.
But let's go back to that for just a second. I want to poke around at it for a second. But when I say operator syndrome, and you start to say it, but I can tell by just watching you, you back away from saying that something is still with you.
Well, I mean, as far as like the military, the Army is always going to be with me. But as far as like any residual issues, I don't feel like that for me. Definitely like TBI is an issue, and I have, double vision and, sleep apnea and all of those other things, joint issues. But
double vision's not a good thing. And
no, I know it's,
and I want to go drill a little deeper on the sleep apnea. I mean, you watch Dr. Free, you've looked at his books and stuff. He says that there's so many different things. It's not only mental, it's physiological, that there's stuff going on inside your body that the levels aren't at the right level. So you have to look at it. And when you say sleep apnea to me, and when you say that you can't sleep, it brings up so many different things to me. And I wonder with you, is it physical? Is it mental that you can't sleep? Are you haunted? Because some people will say I sleep like a baby. Some people, what is it that you think it is? I mean, a lot of people can point to it and go, I'm fat, I'm old, I'm this, I'm that. Can you point why you can't sleep?
it's not I'm not haunted by anything. I don't have nightmares or anything like that. I'm just an extremely light sleeper is one of the main reasons I can't sleep. So, the dog turns over or the toilet starts running in the other room and I can hear that and I have to get up and go turn it off or whatever. And a lot of it's thinking too much. I can't turn my brain off.
I was just about to say, is it hypervigilance?
I don't know if it's hypervigilance. I appreciate having not hypervigilance because that's not a good thing, but like, especially with what I'm trying to, but like vigilance because especially with what I'm doing with security consulting and stuff, that's part of it. And not to make yourself hypervigilant or like stressed out because you're not sure if that door's locked, but just being aware of it. So I don't know if it's hypervigilance. It's just I can't stop thinking about stuff, and I know there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. And I know it's physiological, hormone balances, and all that stuff. I'm just now getting into that, so I've got a ways to go to try to figure that out.
Because that's the first thing that he talks about when he talks about this kind of stuff is that he wants full panels of tests run on everybody.
Yep, for sure. And I think, honestly, that's something that I hope that he's able to affect in the military, at least for special operators. Get a baseline as soon as you get selected and you're in the Q course. Get a baseline of your panels. That way you have something to compare it off of later. Did your testosterone levels drop, but they're still within an amount of that's, within range for the Army, which is a ridiculous range. But what were they at 5 years ago? So yeah, stuff like that. I hope they get to do that soon, and they can kind of look more into that.
What's your thoughts on the alternative therapies where you have like Stellit and you have the ketamine treatments, the ayahuasca? There's all different kinds of things. What's your thoughts on those?
I've done an STG, stellate ganglion block, STB, SGB. I've done that, and I didn't get much out of it. Oddly enough, it just didn't take for me. So I think I've heard great things for guys though. But
did you do left side, right side, both?
Both, yeah.
You did both. See, and that's that really strikes me because your big thing that you said you don't sleep. The guys that I've talked to that have seen positive things from SGB say that they sleep like they've never slept before right after they get it.
Well, so the first 4 days after the first time I did it, I've done it 3 times, I think. And the first time was great. Like I was and I didn't lose any of my vigilance. Like that's what I was worried about, that I'd just get dull, but I didn't lose that. I just wasn't stressed out about it. And it was pretty amazing, but then it was 4 days and then it just went back to normal. And so, and then the next 2 times I had no feeling from it.
When you look back on your career, biggest highlight?
Oh man, probably getting a Green Beret, earning the Green Beret was. I mean, that's something that a lot of guys dream about, and not everybody gets to do. So, I think that would definitely be it.
I got invited up there. That is an amazing ceremony when you guys get it. I mean, it is a very cool ceremony.
Yeah, it is cool.
Lowest low.
Oh man. Honestly, yeah, I want to say losing guys on that second deployment, but like as an individual, because I default to that, but as an individual, probably a point when I recycled mountains in Ranger School, because I had talked to my squad leader, ended up getting killed, but he said, "Hey, our date for deployments got pushed up, so we're leaving at this date," and that's why when I graduated, it was the same day that they deployed. And my company commander, he told me, he's like, "Hey, the commander wants to talk to you." I'm like, "Okay." He said, "Hey, you've done your time there, and we really need you on this deployment," which I was an E5. I don't know why they would need me, but he said, "If you left right now, quit, nobody's going to say anything to you. Nobody's going to think anything negative of you." And so I just had my company commander tell me that I could quit Ranger School after I just recycled and, froze in mountains. And so that was pretty rough. On an individual level, like just inside my head, trying to figure out if I'm going to quit or not. I mean, I obviously didn't. So, but that was pretty rough.
You had to know, though, hearing him say that was kind of a bullshit thing for him to.
I don't know why you would tell a dude that. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. I mean, that seems like something he's telling you for him, not for you.
Maybe. And I would like to have thought that I was a good fire team leader, but I'm not going to make the deployment. I'm not going to change the course of the war. So yeah, I don't know what that was all about, but that was pretty, because it was, and then you got RIs telling you that there's no way they would have recycled, they would have quit and all that stuff. But I stuck it out. It took half a day to call back and said, "I'm staying." So
yeah, I think that it all worked out a little better for you than maybe if you would have left, because I really think, in hearing that, I think if you would have left, I think you go a different route.
That could have, yeah. I might not have gone to selection.
That, and that's what I think about, because when you don't put that tab on, because you feel different. You can't tell me you didn't feel different meeting back up with your unit with your tab on.
Yeah, definitely. And there were some guys that had tabs already, but it was definitely a different experience and feeling, and just a confidence of knowing what I'd just gone through, and then also what you learn, because you do learn stuff in Ranger School. A lot of people will try to put it down, but you learn a lot. Even every Green Beret should try to go. I get crap for that sometimes, because guys on teams will say, "I'm not going to do that," but why not? The guys that have gone, I've never heard anybody that graduated Ranger School say it wasn't worth it. Never. So there are people who be saying, "Oh, well, I've heard that, but I didn't hear it from them." You're saying that third hand, fourth hand, or whatever. So,
well, let's talk about what you're kind of doing now. We've talked about your transition. Just to kind of point out again, I don't really think that you had that much trouble with a transition. I think that you got bored. I think we've talked about you being bored and stuff, but I don't think that you had, I don't think it was your full identity when you got out, like sometimes happens. This episode brought to you by Max Belts. Guys, are you looking for a perfect accessory to wear every single day for every single scenario? Well, you've come to the right place. We all know that nothing stands up to wear and tear like a good leather belt. If you're looking for the toughest leather belt on earth, then you've come to the right place. Max Belts. They're handcrafted in the USA by veterans who are serious about their craft. And if you're looking for a belt that's tough enough for your active lifestyle and helps support those who've given so much to our country, look no further than Max Belts. It's the toughest belt on the planet. It's a perfect solution for casual or dress wear and ideal for utility and firearm carry. It's the highest caliber of American craftsmanship, and it also positively impacts our military charity partners. Once again, Max Belts, you can't go wrong with them. I wear them every day. They're the toughest belt on earth. And you can find all of this and so much more at maxbelts.com.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say I didn't, I'm not like wrapped up in, like I don't like, careful how to say this. I know that some guys have a lot harder time leaving. I think maybe that's if it was abrupt, if it was a medical discharge or something like that, or it was a shorter time. But knowing I was going to retire, I knew I was going to retire. I've been able to, there's bumps in the road, of course, but I've been able to move into it. But still wanting to do things that relate to the skills that I had acquired over the years is really why I started the company that I'm working with, to work on active threats. I don't know. I don't want to mess up the algorithm or whatever, because I think that's a thing, but active threats in churches and schools is really what I focused on now.
Well, let's talk about that then, because that's where this is all kind of leading to, this whole, because I don't think you thought about this when you first joined, when you first saw 9/11 and stuff, that this is what you would be doing later on in life. So you're here, and I want you to explain what you're doing and why it's important, because you and I have talked before about why it's important, because I think a lot of people keep their head in the sand about the stuff that you're teaching.
Yeah. So the basics, I do work on residential too, but the basics of it is understanding. So we'll just talk about schools. So I've taken what I've done in special forces and transferred it over to what's called a vulnerability assessment. That's the physical security, your security protocols. And then I've also focused on active threat training and TECC, tactical emergency casualty care, which is basic. It's fairly basic level trauma medicine. And why I started doing this is because these incidents at schools keep happening. I mean, they happen all the time. And a lot of times we're just missing doing the basic stuff. And I think what I said to you before was that people don't know what they don't know. All right. So schools, administrators, teachers, they didn't become a teacher to be thinking tactically and worrying about where the cover and concealment in their classroom is, or the locks on their door, or how they're going to maneuver a hallway. So that's why, I wanted to kind of put something together for them so they don't have to necessarily think about it. I mean, I want them to think, and I want them to, use the tools that I can give them to apply it to their school. But if you're talking about like a planning for an active threat in a school, most people in the school aren't going to know how to do that. They might know, there might be a template that they can go off of that they've, it's kind of a check the block thing, but they're not going to know. But from my background, that applies directly to planning for this type of stuff. It also applies to law enforcement too. A lot of times law enforcement hasn't planned with the school. And this isn't just like, there's a lot of guys that are teaching CQB to law enforcement, and that's great. That's definitely an important part of it. But I want to go beyond that and have them start planning for the incident prior to it. Going to the school, understanding link up between teachers, the administrators. What is the school's protocol? Are they going to rapid evac, or are they locking down? What does that look like? Law enforcement responders need to know that. So all of that stuff, I'm trying to link all that together and kind of come up with a good solid plan, because time and time again, even locks on doors in classrooms aren't being fixed. Uvalde was a big one. Couldn't lock the door from the inside. It had to be done with a key from the outside. that's not the only school in America that is like that. And even to this day, there's still some like that. So a lot of that stuff getting pointed out, I think, is going to help a lot. And really, it's just about planning and, working together with first responders, fire, law enforcement, fire, EMS, and the schools, and getting them to work together and plan something out. Having a plan when something like this happens is crucial, because otherwise you're just kind of winging it, and that never works.
Is there any way, when you look at what you're doing now, is there any way that you can get the person who doesn't understand? Because I said it before you started on that a lot of people put their heads in the sand. And I'm not just talking residential. We're talking schools or people thinking that could never happen to me, that could never happen here. Is there something that you can do that will kind of drive that point home? I don't know. And I don't think it's personal stories or anything, but there's got to be a way that you can make people understand that this could happen at any time on any day.
So I have a slide in one of my presentations that says it can't happen here, ? And then I've got a lot of the big incidents at schools and the population of the town that they're in. And they are all small school, like all small cities. Uvalde's 15,000 people, and it's not necessarily a suburb, right? It's kind of close to San Antonio, I believe, but it's not directly attached to it. So, there are incidents all over the place that these small towns, the Winder, Georgia, that's a small town, and it's 45 minutes away from Atlanta. That was this past year. So, that's like my attention getter, to understand that this can definitely happen. It happens all the time. It happened, somebody bringing a gun into school happens all the time. So that's just one, one crossword away from something really bad happening.
So how do people find what you're doing and where they can kind of connect with these classes and learn what we're talking about right now?
Yeah. The easiest way is legionsecurity-solutions.com. My email is andrew@legionsecurity-solutions.com. And honestly, like I can't pay everything out of pocket, but if somebody just has a question about it, I want to help I want to help schools. I want to help law enforcement agencies. If there's a rural law enforcement agency that is not sure what to do, then just call me and talk to me about it. I don't care where it's at. We can discuss that, because that's, I don't, like I said, I can't pay for all the equipment and stuff myself. But I'll work with whoever it is, especially if it's smaller rural areas, which I think are the ones that get left behind most often. Larger metropolitan have a lot more money and training that goes into this stuff. But the smaller towns and districts and counties are left behind. So, that's where you can find me, in all those classes. I'll anywhere within driving distance, I'll come to a school and, do a vulnerability assessment or train law enforcement. I've kind of focused on Northeast Oklahoma, but, anywhere in my driving range, I'll come help.
Anywhere they can find you on social media, anything like that on the different sites.
Yeah. I have a Facebook. It's Legion Security Solutions, and then YouTube, Legion Security Solutions. If you just go to YouTube, you can find it that way. It pops up now. And I make videos of primarily kind of analytical stuff. I mean, I talk about like phases of a school shooting. Whatever, different things like that. I kind of break down stuff like that. It's more of a reference for people to like kind of look at, go back to. And I try not to get too like nerdy with the stuff, but it is important. If I'm just talking at a camera, that's kind of how it comes across. But it's more than just analytical stuff. It's also, if I'm teaching law enforcement tactical emergency casualty care, I have no problem with talking about room clearing as well, because that's what I know as well. So it's just kind of across the board.
Instagram.
No Instagram.
Okay, so Facebook. You are on LinkedIn.
Yep, on LinkedIn as well.
The website, and then of course you'll be on my page too. You'll have all your links on there.
Yep.
Yeah. So, man, I'm telling you, I'm so glad we got to do this again.
Glad it worked.
People don't even know the trouble we had the first time with the Wi-Fi and you upgraded your system just to do this interview, and man, I couldn't be more honored.
Good. Well, and my motto, I guess, for my company is don't wait for a problem, find a solution. And so I waited for a problem, which is on me. So I wanted to solve that, get a solution going. So,
all right, guys, you know where you can find Andrew. Let's talk about where you can find me. As always, you can find me on Instagram at the DTD_podcast. You can find me on Facebook at the DTD podcast. You can find me on YouTube where all these conversations, they're in video form at, of course, the DTD podcast. But your one-stop shop, that's going to be dtdpodcast.net. That's going to be audio, video, things that are going on with the show, things that are coming up with the show. My sponsors, you'll have all the connections with them. Any partners that we have, you'll be able to get a hold of Andrew. You'll be able to see pictures that he sent me and get a little more in depth into his career. But it's all right there, dtdpodcast.net. Make sure you go there. As always, you need to be a friend, tell a friend, share, like, subscribe, all that. I hate saying it, but it has to do it. It helps to grow the channel. And just let people know that you're really getting something out of these stories, because I think these are the ones that need to be heard out there. Talking about this show, let's talk about who makes it happen. Let's talk about my sponsors. We're going to go ahead and start it out with nomadicresearch.com. It's a Marine Corps Scout Sniper, a Navy SEAL, went into business together to make some of the greatest gear that you could possibly imagine. T-shirts, hats, hoodies, backpacks. They have go gear, all of that kind of stuff at nomadicresearch.com. It's absolutely amazing. Another guy, tridentcoffee.com. It's the best cold brew that you can deal with. And if you do DTD 15, you get 15% off your order there. Those guys are killing it. If you want a new way to drink cold coffee, if you want mushrooms, if you want nootropics, all of those kind of things, they're the ones to see. Tridentcoffee.com. And don't forget DTD 15 to get 15% off your order. My buddy Mac down in Florida, Mac's belts, the toughest leather belt on the planet. I got 2 of them. Whether you want them for dress, whether you want them for the range, they will do what you need them to do, and they will never fail you. MaxBelts.com. Make sure you go check them out. And finally, a fellow Green Beret to Andrew, Greg Walker down in Southern Pines. He's got Hatchet Brewing at hatchetbrewing.com. Amazing gear and swag that they have down there. They've just done a new release of a new, I guess you would call it, flavor of beer. They're looking to spread this out and be able to mail it all over the United States. They're still looking into that, so let's stay with them. I expect big things from them. They've opened up a second brew house. They are doing absolutely amazing. So check them out, hatchetbrewing.com. Guys, that's going to be it for this week. Andrew, I want to thank you. I'm so honored that you came on here and told your story. It's absolutely amazing. We will definitely connect when I'm up in Oklahoma and go out to dinner. But once again, thank you so much for being on here. That's Andrew. I'm DJ. This has been the show. We'll catch you guys on the next one. See you later.
Thanks, brother.